Welcome to Two Therapists Talking. The hope for this podcast is to talk about important issues related to couples and individuals who are struggling in their lives with many different issues. I'm David Thompson, a marriage and family therapist.
And I'm Sherie Christensen, marriage and family therapist. Please join us as we explore these issues together, and we hope you will learn and be enlightened along the way. Come find us at twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast. Hi, and welcome back to Two Therapists Talking. I'm Sherie.
And I'm David.
And we are going to do the next 2 episodes on the concept of grieving and how to grieve.
How to grieve, which, believe it or not, is like a part of everything we do.
Right.
Hard things happen, and then there's some kind of process of grieving after.
Yes. We have to grieve every loss.
Yeah. Yep.
And
if we don't...
Yeah, then it gets stuck.
It gets stuck.
And we're in trouble.
Yep.
And so we have all of these things, so many things in life require grieving, right? It's not just a death thing.
Right.
It's not just the end of a relationship thing. There are so many little pieces of life that require grieving.
And we probably find in therapy that a lot of the issues go back to incomplete or interrupted grieving from some loss. Like Sherie said, it's loss. So you think about how often we have loss.
Right.
All the time.
Yes.
And so it becomes very important to process well.
Yes. And I think everybody knows, okay, there's these 5 stages of grieving. And I think there are ways to do that well, and there are ways to not do that well, or to do it in an unhealthy way.
Yep.
That's not going to actually end us up in a place where we're processing through, but we're getting stuck.
Right.
So we wanted to talk about it because it is such a huge part of our existence, as being able to do this. And being able to understand, again, as we talk about these stages of grieving, right, they're in a numerical order, but that's not how we actually grieve.
Right.
Right. We may go through 1, we may skip down to 4, then we come back to 2.
Yep.
It is not a linear process. Grieving is not a linear process.
So it's almost like you start with giving yourself permission to be all over the place.
Yes.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's actually normal. It's actually healthy to do that and be wherever you are whenever you're there.
Yep. And
I feel like also as part of that linear grieving thing that we think we should get to do, it's not just with these steps, like, oh, okay, first I'm going to do denial, then I'm going to do anger, but we're all over with that process. I think the other thing that we get stuck in with sort of this linear is like, okay, I'm going to check the boxes of grief, and then I arrive. And
right.
I think that is something that isn't necessarily true as well.
Right.
We come in and out of different spaces of grieving, whether it's because of triggers later, or memory that comes up, or anniversaries, that come up. It's a very fluid space. And so again, I think what David's saying about letting yourself be wherever you are is important.
Yeah, and new experiences will bring up old hurts. Mm-hmm. And another concept too is we're not trying to get through life without any pain or any suffering. Even though we kind of feel like that's the purpose, it's actually our scars that bring us so much meaning,
right,
and purpose. And so we're not trying to get rid of the scars. What we're trying to do is mourn them, grieve them, release them, and remember them in a way that actually creates meaning and purpose and makes our lives better.
Right.
So just the concept, I think, of grieving doesn't mean you never think of it, like it never happened. No, grieving is you just processed what's happened, and now it's working for you instead of just against you.
Right.
Is another way to think of it.
Right. And that you have more space in your life it's not taking up quite as much space in your
Right,
life as
right.
it did before. So we have 5 stages of grief, right? Everyone, I think, kind of knows what these are. It's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Yep.
And as we go through these, we're going to talk about what healthy ways to be in each of these stages look like.
Yeah.
And what some unhealthy ways to be in these stages look like.
Right.
Unhealthy coping. And it's important to notice, to remember again, as we're giving ourselves tons of space and a lot of compassion around grieving, is you're not going to do it perfectly. There are definitely going to be times when you're showing up in those unhealthy spaces.
Yep.
And this is just hey, when you notice this,
Yeah.
Be aware.
Yep.
You go, okay, wow, today I'm really checking out. Do I feel like I have the energy and the space to step into maybe a healthy way of doing this? And sometimes we're not, right? Sometimes we don't have that much emotional energy.
Right.
And we are in a place where it's like, oh, I'm just checking out today. And I'm aware that I'm checking out, and I really don't have the emotional space to shift that today. And that's okay.
And that's okay. Yep. I've had a lot of people ask, well, what does healthy grieving look like? Mm-hmm. Not because we're always going to be in it, but it can be helpful to know, these are things that if I'm in a good place, it's probably going to look like this, sound like this. But through all of this, there's no criticism or judgment allowed. That's this idea that, we all grieve in healthy ways and we all grieve in unhealthy ways. And almost you could say less effective. I kind of almost like that.
Yes.
We love to use more effective
yes.
and less effective.
More effective and less effective.
Versus like right and wrong, and you are grieving wrong.
Right.
Well, I think there's so many different things we go through with so much intense emotion that we're not wanting to say you're grieving wrong. We just want to say more or less effective so that you kind of have some hope to move into healthier, more effective ways to do certain things when you feel certain things than you have before. So
right.
It can be helpful to have ideas, to have almost like a template for grieving.
Yes. So we'll start in this order, like the order that they're listed. Again, remembering that you can be in and out of many of these at many different times and ways. That first stage of grieving is denial.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about what denial looks like when you're doing it a little bit more effectively. So as we're looking at that first stage of grieving, which is denial, let's talk a little bit about less effective ways to be in this stage.
Yes.
So the first one might be denying or minimizing the actual impact that it's having on you. Like, oh, it's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. Everything's fine. It could be worse. Oh, that one's a big one.
Yeah.
It could be worse. I should be grateful. I don't believe this is, I don't believe it. Right?
Yep. So it is actually denial.
Yes. Which is interesting because you would think, But yeah, actually denial. This one, I think it's also helpful to think about how other people show up in your grieving space and how they might be minimizing your grieving space as well, right?
Yeah.
Or how they might be showing up in less effective ways or more effective ways for you in grieving. So hopefully you can get some ideas around this. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't know either how to grieve themselves or how to show up for someone else who's grieving.
Definitely.
Right?
Yep.
And I know, from personal experience and in talking with a lot of people that are going through big, big grieving things, how often comments that are made actually are extremely damaging to their healing process and their grieving process because they're just so way off base.
Yes.
So for me, one of those ones that shows up that I think blows everyone out of the water in their grieving process is the at least. At least da 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 da.
Yeah.
Like at least your, person that just passed away didn't kill themselves, or at least, that happened, but at least you still have other people in your family you can talk to.
Yeah.
It is such an incredibly negating phrase.
Yeah. Pretty classic Brene Brown, sympathy instead of empathy, right?
Right.
At least.
At least. It's just such a horrific thing.
Not very comforting.
If anyone in your life is going through anything, those words should never
Don't
come
do
out
it.
of your mouth. Just
Don't do
please
it.
don't do it. Just recently, I was talking with a cousin of mine who has had a rare form of cancer and was able to beat it. It's likely it will come back, but she keeps hearing she has all of these side effects from it. Just awful side effects. Horrible. No one would ever want to live with these side effects. And she keeps hearing from other people, at least you're still alive. Right? And I was like, that is the worst thing a human could say to another human. Like,
Wow.
at least you're still alive.
Yeah.
Like, these things might actually, the effects of getting rid of this cancer might actually kill you. But at least you're still alive.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So
be mindful.
again, be mindful of how you're showing up in other people's grieving processes. But I think sometimes we do that to ourselves too.
Oh, for sure.
Right? At
Yep.
least I'm not in this situation. It could be worse.
It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is not allowing you healthy grieving.
Yes, it's completely negating
Yep.
your grieving process.
Yep. Another common way is to just be really, really busy. So you stay busy, you work to the point of exhaustion. It's
Yes.
like you're refusing to see it or to look at it. You're denying just in a different way where you stay really, really busy.
Yes.
Which has a place, by the way. And I think you'll find as we
Yes.
go through these that it's not like it's all or nothing.
Right.
Your kids are out of the home, you don't have a job, and you have a lot of time. Well,
Yes.
you need to kind of stay busy
Yes.
in certain ways. So take all of this with, kind
Be
of a grain of
aware.
salt, some understanding. But
Where's the middle balanced place with this? But
this
yes.
is really so busy you don't look at it. You don't think about it. You don't consider it. You don't give it the space it needs.
Yes. You're eliminating processing.
Yep.
You're just jumping to keep yourself away from the possibility of having to hold space for it. There's definitely something, again, yes, to be said by not having too much time to think about it, still
Right.
doing things, still accomplishing things, still having goals, still, moving through. Yes, I just need to not think about it sometimes. But there's a place, and I'll talk to my clients about, schedule that time. It's okay to go to work. It's okay to have these things that you're doing.
Right.
And schedule time to hold space for it, to allow yourself to grieve,
Yeah.
and do that regularly.
Or another one is you just pretend it didn't happen. Again, you see how this is
Yes.
less effective denial because it's like it didn't even happen.
Yes.
That's not going to be very helpful.
There's no loss because it never existed in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also telling everyone, regardless of the impact or the consequence. So, yeah, you're just kind of dumping this everywhere.
We see this a lot with infidelity where,
yeah.
you're tempted to just tell everyone for a couple of different reasons. But it really is wise to kind of be cautious and think it through and talk to others about,
Yes.
what they think or what would help. And so telling everyone is maybe on the face of it, like a really kind of catharsis,
Right.
but maybe not the best thing.
Yes. So what you want to do is make sure you definitely want to be reaching out about it. You definitely want to have your people that you can talk to, but be aware of like who is safe,
Yeah.
who can show up for you in the ways that you are needing.
Yeah.
You're going to have those kind of people. And you may actually have a range of people, like as I have noticed my grieving processes in different scenarios. there are certain people that I reach out to under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Right? I need someone that is going to give me that maybe God connection, get me going again. I'm going to reach out to these people.
Yep.
If I just need to say all of the things and vent and have someone who is just going to be like, yeah, that really sucks, then I'm going to go to these people. Like, I have different avenues that I can rely on people to show up in specific ways.
Yep. Perfect.
But again, not everyone and not no one, right? Like, we also see that sometimes with infidelity.
Right.
Like, we just clam up and we pretend it didn't happen.
Yep.
We're putting on a facade for
Nobody's
the world.
ever going to know.
Yep.
Right.
And it is really critical to have both, because part of the healing process, part of the forgiving process, part of these grieving processes is absolutely being able to talk about it and being able to reach out and talk about it whenever you need to.
Yeah.
But again, it's this time and place with who are my people that I can count on to show up in ways that are going to be effective.
Yep.
So another way is dissociation. And we see that it is there's a clinical level of dissociation, right? Where you're actually leaving your body and you're not actually there anymore.
Right.
Right? And that's a clinical level. But oftentimes I notice with my clients who are going through other types of grieving, there's kind of a middle way of checking out of your body.
Right.
Like, mentally, you're just not really there anymore.
Yep.
And you might come back a little while later and go, oh, yeah, I don't actually know what happened in that conversation or in this situation.
You have no bandwidth for anything, and you're
Yes.
you're there, but you're not there.
Yes. And again, there may be times when you are legitimately in that space and you legitimately can't do something else.
Right.
That is totally fine.
Right.
Our bodies actually do that on purpose, right? Too much and you're out, right?
Yep.
But again, we want to be able to be eventually in, or more often than not, in those spaces of more effective grieving.
Right.
And so if you are noticing that you're doing that a lot,
Yeah.
make sure you get into therapy. Make sure you get into spaces where you can receive the support you need so that you're not dissociating.
Yep. Because we have lots of tools and techniques for grounding and different things to help. So that can be one of the signs that, more help is going to be really important for you.
Right. I love that. If you're noticing a lot of less effective coping as we're going through these,
Yep.
that is a great sign. Like, hey, maybe I need to get a little bit more help and support.
Because the reality is probably whatever you're going through is connecting to a lot of things.
Right.
And it's not just this thing, it's a lot of stuff. And help will make a big difference in working through all of it. Because we don't want to just get through this thing. We want to see how it connects and what we can do to make it feel better long term.
Yes.
Not be so triggered by other things that are happening.
Yes. And if you can imagine, if you haven't been very effective grieving in the past, then as you pile more layers of grieving on top, then you're getting triggers to old grieving. Lots of different other things are going on.
Exactly.
So reach out. Yes. The last couple of things that we have in terms of less effective denial are distracting by self-destruction, right? Creating different kinds of chaos, and along with that is sort of this numbing out with things, which you can numb out with drugs, you can numb out with alcohol, with food, with sex, with spending money, with gaming. There are a lot of ways.
Working.
Working.
And again, the idea here isn't if you do any of this, you must be in unhealthy or less effective coping. No, there's levels.
Right.
If you feel like maybe I'm doing this too much, or I find that I'm doing it all the time, that's your cue to say, okay, I'm not really moving through this the way I want to. This is less effective. And in the term, when we're talking grieving or mourning, I think less effective just means it's more painful than it needs to be, and it's longer than it needs to be. So when we're talking more effective, we're just trying to help you to work through it and release it sooner rather than later.
Right.
just to minimize the suffering that's already come with the pain of the loss, whatever the loss is.
Right.
So again, no judgment, no criticism. But if you find you're doing these things a lot, or even just more than you want to be, here are
Some effective
some
ways.
more effective ways. So when we're talking denial, effective is to acknowledge the truth of what happened, and you can start a loss list that you add to over time.
Yeah.
And we talk about this all the time because you're now expressing, which is really good to help with
Yes.
emotions.
Yes. I love that. Another one that, might be part of your loss list is journaling regularly about what you're experiencing. And then you have the opportunity to go back and reread, and you can see the patterns and how you've healed.
Yep.
And then, parts that you're still experiencing or new parts that you realized, oh, I didn't even know this is a part, but I couldn't get to that because I was still grieving this other part
Right.
over here.
Yep.
You can start to see the pattern and the healing that are happening as you're moving through your grief.
And again, you're getting it out. This is the expression part.
Yep.
Definitely, you probably know this, an effective way to move through denials, to talk about what's happening with trusted or fair witnesses that don't tell you what to do.
Yes.
This is what Sherie was talking about earlier. Be careful who you talk to, how much you share. If you find that they're telling you things that are making it worse, making you more confused, that are just hurting your feelings or making this harder, set boundaries with them or don't talk to them about it.
Yeah.
And this is the whole, well, at least you don't, well, I don't know that I'm going to talk to you about this anymore, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
trusted, fair witnesses can be a really good way.
Right. And as part of that, if you're getting community support, having a group of people who are going through the same experience, that is going to help. You can find people there that can be some of those safe people for you.
Yep.
People who are further along in that path of grief than you are.
Right.
And asking them for help, asking for support. Those things are going to be really, really helpful. Getting groups, getting community support. And this can be a little bit tricky. And so just be aware that, for example, I have clients who have gone through the suicide of a loved one, of a spouse. And support groups about the loss of a spouse isn't effective. Like, it's not
It's different.
what they're needing
Yeah.
because it's so much, it's just a different ball of wax.
Yeah, for sure.
And so a suicide support group, it ends up
Yeah.
being more effective in some of these cases, right? So, but again, you may be in a different place in your grieving where actually the loss is going to be more effective at that point in time, right? So just be aware that sometimes we kind of have this blanket, support group for this thing, and it may not actually be
Right.
what we need.
Right.
So again, be aware of that as you're looking for that community support. Don't just go and be like, well, I have to do this because they said be in a support group. Like, look for what
careful
your
it
needs
fits.
are.
Yeah,
Yes, make sure
definitely.
it's fitting.
And if you're in one that's not working, find another one.
Yes.
That's okay.
Absolutely.
Kind of along with that is just explore information that will help you to get a realistic perspective on the situation.
Right.
And we have a lot of resources now more than ever. I am sure there are podcasts devoted just to grieving, for example.
Right.
And so really explore all the options that you have available.
Understand what's realistic, because I think sometimes we get in these spaces where we think, I should be at this
Yeah,
point.
Definitely.
And that may not be the case.
Yep.
Again, so now that we've said, hey, go explore all the stuff that's out there, also make sure you're aware of when you need to take breaks.
Yep.
When you're getting overwhelmed. Make it a point to take time outs and recognize that, like we talked about, sometimes when you check out, you don't want to do that too much. But
Right.
also there are times you absolutely need to. You need to say, I need to put this away for a little while and just watch a movie. Just do something where I don't have to think about this process.
Yep.
Because it is a lot to carry all of the time. And sometimes you need a break, and it's really important.
You definitely will. And the final piece to more effective with the denial is to get help. So look for therapy, get support. Again, this can be really, really important because it's not just about the thing that's happening right here and now, but how it connects to everything that's similar to this.
Right.
And if it has not been worked through very well, it's all coming up.
Yeah.
And you'll want the kind of support that, therapy can help provide.
Right. Looking for therapists that are well-versed in grief, that are well-versed in trauma, recognizing that you may very likely have physical symptoms or illnesses that come as a result of the level of grief or trauma that you've experienced.
Yep.
So being aware of that.
So we hope this is helpful. We're going to continue
With
do more episodes on this process of more effective, less effective grieving. Next time, we're going to talk about anger. So please join us.
See you then. Thank you for listening to Two Therapists Talking. We look forward to sharing more conversations with you. Connect with us at twotherapisttalking.com or email podcast@twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast.